Have you ever felt like you're navigating the Bermuda Triangle of romance, walking right beside a person you care about while drowning in total uncertainty? That, ladies and gentlemen, is the dreaded situationship. It is the relationship Bermuda Triangle. You share the late-night texts, the vulnerable laughs, and the weird morning attachments, but the conversation dies the second you try to establish a label. Psychologically, this gray area is a psychological stalemate where we play it safe. It's like standing in a queue for a bus that might never arrive. You're not moving forward, but you also aren't going back. We stay in this comfortable limbo because the risk of rejection is so scary, but the silence of an ambiguous future is even scarier. You are basically holding your breath underwater, terrified to let go, but too exhausted to keep fighting for air. This is the ultimate emotional trap, and it is draining you of the connection you desperately deserve. You know that terrifying sweet spot where you're gripping the edge of a cliff, staring down into the abyss? That, my friends, is where your brain gets the perfect dopamine kick. It turns a budding connection into a high-stakes slot machine, rigged for heartbreak. Neuroscience actually tells us we crave uncertainty more than certainty itself. That ambiguous text message isn't just annoying, it's chemical equivalent to smelling a haiku, written by a Shakespearean poet you never met. We pine for the potential star of a relationship more than the reality of one, because the chemical hit of anticipation is 10 times more stimulating than the stability of a committed partner. That situationship is just a floating loop of uncertainty, designed to distract you from your own fear of safety. Ever stuck your toe in the water of something real, only to yank it back because it feels dangerously real? When we keep partners at arm's length in a situationship, it isn't usually a lack of love. It's a hard stop at the invisible wall of vulnerability. Psychologically, this hesitation is often a defense mechanism, protecting the ego from the radical risk of total exposure. Think of your heart not as a safe haven, but as an exposed nerve ending. Evolution wired our brains to view this kind of deep openness like stepping into a lion's den, because without armor, rejection feels like a threat to our very survival. We tell ourselves we aren't ready, but we are really addicted to the myth of safety that comes with distance. We love the comfort of being liked, but we fear the dissection of being known. Eventually, trembling behind that wall gets exhausting. Let's pull back the curtain on the comfort trap that keeps us stuck. The situationship is really just the emotional tug-of-war between an anxious-avoidant dynamic, where one chases and the other retreats. Consider the fearful, dismissive attachment style as having a guardrail that spontaneously removes itself the second you drive toward it. These individuals crave the intimacy they see others enjoying, but the moment vulnerability hits, their biology kicks into fight or flight, flooding them with panic instead of relief. Because they are wired to self-soothe alone, the first time you make them feel actually safe, they panic and bolt. It is a cruel paradox. Your brain screams for connection, but your body screams for protection, leaving you stuck in the gray area where you can get close, but never committed. Have you ever sat there rewinding a conversation, convinced that a text arriving at 2 a.m. proves they actually really care, even when the rest of the week is cold and distant? That mental gymnastics isn't just romance, it's cognitive dissonance at work. When reality hurts too much, we know they aren't committed. The brain kicks in to resolve the pain by ruthlessly rewriting the script. It's like we have a permanent eraser for red flags, taking a chaotic, emotionally unavailable situation and painting over it with a heartwarming narrative where breadcrumbs become breadcrumbs of love. We convince ourselves that ghosting is just being busy, and a lack of labels is the ultimate freedom. We aren't seeing who they actually are, we're seeing who we desperately need them to be. We build a cathedral out of hopes and prayers just so we can wait inside for a non-existent king. And that is the terrifying comfort of the almost relationship. You're sitting on your couch at 2 a.m., doom scrolling for a reply that never comes, telling yourself you can't leave because you've invested too much already. That is the sunk cost fallacy sneaking into your dating life. It transforms your heart into a rigged casino where you fed the machine with late-night coffee runs, endless texts, and emotional labor, hoping the next reel finally matches. You aren't waiting for them, you're waiting to win. It's the terrifying logic that you can't walk away from a bad hand just because you've already lost your shirt. You decide to keep playing to salvage the memories from a doomed romance, But in reality, you're just losing time that you can never get back. So why do we double down on losing streaks? Let's break down the other terrifying psychological tricks we play on ourselves next. You know that heart-racing dopamine rush when your screen lights up at 2 a.m.? That adrenaline spike feels addictive, like your brain is issuing a coupon for a thrill. But here is the ugly truth. As human beings, we actually find genuine comfort in certainty, and ambiguity is physically stressful for our brains. Imagine spending 30 minutes every morning trying to decipher if a text is casual or meaningful. That is not passion. That is mentally draining cognitive labor. You aren't just falling for them. You're mentally wrestling with a puzzle that has no pieces. The excitement eventually peters out, and suddenly you aren't in love anymore. You're just exhausted, terrified that you're awake, while the world sleeps, ghost hunting for validation that they simply haven't given you yet. Ever feel like you're trapped in a psychological holding pattern? That's the terrifying reality of the emotional vacuum. It's not love. It's a dopamine addiction, where your brain gets hooked on the feeling of almost rather than the reality of being together. You're essentially working out on a relationship treadmill, running at full speed but staying in the exact same spot. If you find yourself ravenous for a good morning text, ask yourself if you miss them, or if you're just addicted to the validation. Genuine connection requires vulnerability, not just a crash diet of weekly check-ins. To reclaim your freedom, you have to accept that the anxiety you feel right now, that's actually withdrawal from an unrequited dependency. If you're chasing a ghost, hit delete and step off the treadmill for good. The cycle of a situationship is basically you running on a psychological treadmill. You crave the rush of their texts, but paralyze yourself with the terror of unpredictability, a phenomenon known as approach avoidance conflict. Your brain is literally wired to keep you in the gray area because it feels safe, but it is also keeping you stagnant. You are essentially standing waist-deep in a swimming pool, wading in the warm water, but refusing to learn to swim where the deep end is. To break this loop of indecision, you have to drown out the fear with a single, intentional move. The next time you are together, instead of hoping they'll offer clarity, offer it yourself. Say something bold like, "I've really enjoyed the last few weeks, and I'd love to make plans with you next week." It requires shedding the armor of playing it cool, but that vulnerability is the only thing that cuts the tether. Because right now, you aren't in a relationship. You're just a person waiting for permission to love. Let's talk about why your brain tells you that risk is too high. Remember that feeling of walking through a thick, suffocating fog where you can't see your own feet because the path is never quite clear? That lingering anxiety you feel in these gray zones? That isn't just awkwardness, it is a cognitive tax we pay for ambiguity. Psychology tells us the brain actually generates physical stress signals when we lack closure, making us crave boundaries even more than we crave the connection itself. Stop treating your worth as something to be discovered by the person who happens to text you next. You are the prize, not the puzzle. Do not let the fear of the what if keep you from the certainty of what is. Make the bold move towards someone who knows they want you, because clarity isn't just nice to have, it is how you protect your peace.